The throne room of the Skyborn Empire gleamed with cold silver light. Princess Kira stood before the viewing screen, watching the tiny human shuttle dock with her people's flagship. Her four-fingered hand rested on the crystal rail, expression unreadable. Another delegation from Earth, her advisor whispered. The third this cycle. Kira's pale blue skin seemed to glow in the starlight filtering through the dome above. Her people, the Velrothi, had ruled this sector for 10,000 years. Humans had only just reached the stars a century ago. They were children. Weak, short-lived, driven by primitive emotions. Let them beg, she said softly. It changes nothing. Her mother, Queen Nara, had already decided. The human colonies in the border systems would be absorbed. It was inevitable. The galaxy belonged to the strong. But Kira felt something stir in her chest as she watched the shuttle's doors open. Something she had been taught to ignore since childhood. Curiosity. The Velrothi did not love. They formed strategic bonds. They reproduced through genetic contracts. Emotions were considered a flaw of lesser species, a weakness that led to chaos and suffering. Yet humans spoke of love constantly. In their art, their music, their foolish wars. They claimed it made them strong. Kira did not believe them. She had seen too much of the galaxy's cruelty. Love was a story primitives told themselves to cope with their brief, meaningless lives. The human delegation was being escorted to the lower chambers. Tomorrow, she would meet them. Tomorrow, she would show them the truth. Tomorrow, everything would begin. Stephen checked his reflection in the shuttle's polished wall. His simple gray diplomatic uniform looked plain compared to the shimmering corridors of the Velrothi ship. He was 24 years old, the youngest member of Earth's delegation, and he knew exactly why he'd been chosen. He was expendable. Ambassador Wren, the silver-haired leader of their group, gathered the 5 humans together. Remember, we're here to buy time. The Velrothi fleet could wipe out our border colonies in a week. We need to negotiate a treaty, any treaty. Stephen nodded with the others, but his stomach churned. He'd studied the Velrothi culture for 2 years. They respected strength, strategy, and dominance. They viewed emotion as weakness. And humans, with their short lifespans and passionate natures, were considered barely civilized. The Velrothi escort, a tall warrior named Drell, led them through corridors that seemed grown rather than built. Organic curves, crystal surfaces, light that pulsed like a heartbeat. You will address the princess as Radiance, Drell instructed, his voice like grinding stone. You will not approach within 3 meters. You will not speak unless granted permission. Stephen memorized every rule, every detail. His role was to observe and assist. Nothing more. They were brought to guest quarters that were beautiful and cold. Stephen touched the wall and felt it hum with energy. Everything here was advanced beyond Earth's understanding. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what he'd read. The Velrothi had no concept of love. They had eliminated it from their society millennia ago through genetic conditioning. He wondered what kind of life that was. Princess Kira entered the negotiation chamber with 4 guards. The humans stood immediately, bowing as instructed. She studied them with dark, analytical eyes. They were so small. Fragile-looking. Their skin tones varied, their features soft. Ambassador Wren stepped forward, her head lowered respectfully. Radiance, we come seeking understanding between our peoples. Kira gestured to the curved seats. Sit. Speak your terms. The negotiation was predictable. The humans offered trade, technology sharing, cultural exchange. They spoke of mutual benefit and peaceful coexistence. Wren was skilled, diplomatic, careful. But Kira had already seen her mother's military projections. Earth had nothing the Velrothi needed. The human colonies occupied valuable systems. Simple mathematics. Her gaze drifted to the young man sitting at the end of the human delegation. He was watching her, not with fear or calculation, but with open curiosity. When their eyes met, he didn't look away. How strange. Your offer is noted, Kira said when the ambassador finished. We will consider it. It was a dismissal. The humans understood. They rose, bowed, and filed out. Except the young one hesitated for a fraction of a second, as if he wanted to say something. Then he followed the others. They have nothing we want, her chief advisor said after the humans left. No, Kira agreed. But keep them here for now. Let them believe we are considering their proposal. Why delay, Radiance? Kira touched the armrest of her throne, feeling its cool surface. Because I want to understand what makes them think they matter. It was not mercy. It was curiosity. That's what she told herself. Stephen was assigned to the delegation's research team, studying Velrothi culture and looking for any leverage in negotiations. It meant he had limited access to the ship's library archives and observation decks. 3 days into their stay, he stood at a massive window, watching stars stream past as the flagship traveled. The view was breathtaking. Do you find it beautiful? Stephen turned, shocked. Princess Kira stood 5 meters away, alone except for a single guard at the corridor entrance. He bowed quickly. Radiance, yes. Very beautiful. She approached the window, though she kept the required distance. Beauty is an emotional response. We have analyzed it as a neurological reaction to patterns and stimuli. Nothing more. Stephen chose his words carefully. Does understanding it make it less real? Her eyes fixed on him. They were completely black, like polished stone. You are the observer. Stephen, correct? He was surprised she knew his name. Yes, Radiance. Why did Earth send someone so young to such critical negotiations? Honesty seemed the only safe path. Because I'm not critical. If your people took offense and removed me, it wouldn't damage the delegation. Something flickered across her face. Not quite surprise. You are aware you are expendable. Yes. And yet you came anyway. My planet needed me to. Kira tilted her head slightly, studying him like a specimen. Loyalty without benefit. Another emotion-driven choice. Is loyalty really so bad? Stephen asked quietly. It is inefficient. It causes beings to act against their own survival. Stephen looked back at the stars. Maybe. But it also makes life worth living. Kira was silent for a long moment. Then she turned and walked away without another word. The guard followed her, leaving Stephen alone. But something had shifted. The next morning, Ambassador Wren called Stephen into her quarters, her face grave. The Queen has responded to our proposal, she said. It's a rejection. We have 3 days before they escort us back to Earth. After that. She didn't need to finish. After that, the Velrothi fleet would move on the colonies. Millions would be displaced or killed. Stephen felt cold. Is there anything we can do? Keep trying. Look for anything in their culture, their history, that might give us an angle. Wren's voice was tired. I know it's hopeless, but we have to try. Stephen spent the day buried in the archives. Velrothi history was one of constant expansion, military efficiency, and cultural evolution. 10,000 years ago, they had been emotional like humans. Then a catastrophic civil war erupted, driven by passion, jealousy, and hate. The survivors had genetically engineered emotions out of their species. They became logical, efficient, and united. They built an empire. But Stephen noticed something in the ancient records. Before the change, the Velrothi had created art that made human works look simple by comparison. Music that could supposedly make stars weep. Poetry that captured the soul. After the genetic conditioning, their art became mathematical. Perfect, but empty. They had gained an empire but lost something essential. That evening, Stephen requested an audience with the princess. To his shock, it was granted. Kira received him in a smaller chamber, a garden of crystalline plants that hummed with soft light. "You have one question," she said. "Ask it." Stephen took a breath. "Do you ever wonder what your people lost when they removed emotion?" Kira's expression remained neutral, but her hand tightened on the crystal flower she had been examining. "No," she said. "We lost nothing but weakness." But Stephen saw something in her eyes that made him doubt her words. Kira could not explain why she kept granting the human called Stephen access to her presence. Logic suggested he was trying to manipulate her, to find weakness in her position. Yet his questions were never strategic. They were philosophical. During the delegation's remaining days, he appeared at the observation deck where she often worked. Always respectful. Always maintaining distance. But always with those curious, genuine eyes. "Your people feel sadness," he said one day. "Don't you fear what you'll lose when someone dies?" "We do not lose what we never possessed emotionally," Kira replied. "Death is transition. We honor the efficiency of their contribution." "That sounds lonely." "Loneliness is an emotion. We do not experience it." Stephen looked at her for a long moment. "I don't believe you." The audacity shocked her. "You call your princess a liar?" "No, Radiance. I think your people convinced themselves of something that isn't entirely true." He should have been punished for such words. Yet Kira found herself intrigued. "Explain." "You still create beauty," Stephen gestured to the crystal garden. "This place has no strategic function. You chose to make it. That's not pure logic. It serves psychological efficiency. A calm environment improves." "You wanted it to be beautiful," Stephen interrupted gently. "That's okay. Beauty matters." Kira felt something strange in her chest. A flutter she couldn't name. It was uncomfortable. "Our time is concluded," she said sharply. Stephen bowed and left. That night, Kira stood in her private quarters, looking at her reflection. Her genetically perfect features, her enhanced physiology, her superior intellect. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her dual hearts beating. And wondered why one human's words disturbed her perfect certainty. The human delegation was scheduled to depart the next morning. Stephen packed his few belongings, heavy with failure. They'd accomplished nothing. The colonies would fall. A Velrothi guard appeared at his door. "The princess requires your presence." Stephen followed through midnight dim corridors to Kira's private study. She stood before a holographic display showing Earth's colonies, her back to him. "Tell me," she said without turning, "why your people fight for these worlds. They are poor in resources. Difficult to defend. Logically, you should abandon them." Stephen stepped closer, forgetting protocol. "Because 50 million people live there. Families. Communities. Dreams. Emotion. Humanity." Kira finally turned. "And you would die for them? For strangers? If I could save them?" "Yes. That is irrational. That's love, Radiance." Her expression shifted, just slightly. "You claim to love millions you have never met." Stephen shook his head. "Love isn't just romance. It's caring about others more than yourself. It's what makes us more than just surviving. It makes us alive. We are alive without it. Are you?" The question came out softer than Stephen intended. "When did you last feel joy? Real joy, not satisfaction at efficiency?" Kira was silent for a long moment. "You speak of love as if it is strength. But it is love that destroyed my people's first empire. Jealousy, possessiveness, rage born from passion. We nearly went extinct. So you cut out the disease and killed the patient, Stephen said quietly. Her eyes flashed. We survived. We thrived. You exist. That's not the same as living. The words hung between them. Kira's hand trembled slightly before she controlled it. Leave, she whispered. Stephen bowed and withdrew, his heart aching for reasons he couldn't fully explain. The human shuttle departed at dawn. Kira watched from her private viewing room, her face composed. The logical decision had been made. The fleet would move in 3 days. Yet she could not stop thinking about Stephen's final words. You exist. That's not the same as living. Her advisor, General Voss, entered. The Queen requests your presence, Radiance. The military briefing begins within the hour. Kira nodded, but didn't move. General, do you ever wonder about our ancestors? Before the conditioning? Voss was ancient, over 300 years old. His expression remained neutral. Wondering serves no function, Radiance. That is not what I asked. A pause. Then, carefully, I knew one. A survivor from before, preserved in medical stasis. When I was young, before they finally died. Kira turned, surprised. You never reported this. It was not hidden. Simply, unimportant. Voss stared at nothing. They told me about love. How it felt like fire and water together. How it made everything hurt and everything beautiful. Did you believe them? I thought them damaged. Broken by primitive brain chemistry. Voss's voice was steady. But they smiled when they spoke of it. We do not smile like that anymore, Radiance. Kira felt that flutter in her chest again. Stronger now. Almost painful. The human Stephen, she said slowly. He spoke of love as strength. Humans are weak. Are they? They expand despite inferior technology. They fight impossible odds. They create art that. She paused. That makes me feel. The admission was dangerous. Feelings were not prohibited, but they were suspect. Signs of genetic regression. Voss studied her carefully. What do you wish to do, Radiance? Kira looked at the stars where the human shuttle had vanished. I do not know, she admitted. And that uncertainty terrified her more than any enemy fleet. Stephen returned to Earth's diplomatic station in the neutral zone, his mission failed. Ambassador Wren was already coordinating evacuation of the border colonies. There wasn't enough time. Wasn't enough ships. He couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. He kept seeing Kira's face, the way her certainty had cracked just slightly when he challenged her beliefs. He'd felt something in those conversations. A connection he couldn't name. She was alien, impossibly different, but beneath the genetic conditioning and cultural armor, he'd sensed someone searching for answers she wasn't allowed to ask. On the third night, alarms shrieked through the station. Velrothi ships had entered the system. It was over. Stephen rushed to the command center where Wren and the other diplomats watched the tactical display in horror. A massive Velrothi fleet surrounded the colonies. But they weren't firing. A communication came through. Princess Kira's face appeared on the screen, composed and regal. I wish to speak with the human called Stephen. The room went silent. Everyone turned to stare at him. Wren nodded sharply. Stephen stepped forward, his heart hammering. Radiance, I'm here. Kira's dark eyes fixed on him across the light years. I have convinced my mother to delay military action. You will return to our flagship. Alone. We will discuss alternative solutions. It was clearly a trap. Everyone in the room knew it. I'll come, Stephen said immediately. Stephen, no, Wren began. If there's any chance to save those people, I have to take it. He looked at the ambassador. You know I'm right. Ren's face was anguished, but she nodded. 6 hours later, Stephen's small shuttle approached the Velrothi flagship alone. He had no weapons, no leverage, no plan. Only hope. And something else he was only beginning to understand. Kira met Stephen in the same crystal garden where they'd spoken before. She was alone, which was unprecedented. Princesses did not meet foreign visitors without guards. You came, she said. You asked. Stephen stepped closer, within the forbidden 3 meters. Why am I here, Radiance? She didn't correct the distance breach. I have been analyzing our previous conversations. Your claims about emotion and strength. I wish to understand them better. You stopped an invasion to talk to me. I delayed an invasion to test a hypothesis. Her voice was controlled, but Stephen heard something beneath it. Uncertainty. My mother believes humans are weak. That your emotions make you inferior. I suggested we verify this assumption. How? Kira's gaze was intense. You will stay here. Live among my people. If you can demonstrate that human emotion provides genuine strength rather than weakness, I will advocate for a treaty. If you fail, you will be returned, and the invasion proceeds. Stephen's mind raced. What kind of demonstration? I have not determined that yet. She paused. But I want to understand you, Stephen of Earth. You speak of love as if it is real. As if it matters. I want to know if you truly believe that, or if it is just words. He saw it then, behind her perfect control. She was searching. Questioning everything her society had taught her. I believe it, Stephen said quietly. And I'll prove it to you. Then you will be assigned quarters near my wing. You will attend council sessions as an observer. You will answer my questions honestly, no matter how difficult. Agreed. Kira took a step closer. They were less than a meter apart now, close enough that Stephen could see faint patterns in her blue skin, like constellations. Why do you do this? She whispered. Risk yourself for strangers. Because everyone matters, Stephen said. Even alien princesses who pretend not to feel. Her breath caught, barely audible. Then she turned away. Welcome to the Skyborn flagship, Stephen. I hope you survive what comes next. He didn't know if she meant the test or something far more dangerous. Stephen's new quarters were in the royal wing, a shocking honor for a human. The next morning, a servant brought him traditional Velrothi clothing, elegant and practical. He dressed awkwardly, unfamiliar with the magnetic seals. Kira arrived unexpectedly, dismissed the servant with a gesture, and adjusted his collar with quick, efficient movements. You will attend the morning council, she said, her fingers cool against his neck. You will observe only. Do not speak unless I permit it. Understood. Her hands lingered for just a moment longer than necessary. Then she stepped back, composed once more. The council chamber was immense, filled with generals, advisors, and noble houses. Stephen sat in a small seat behind Kira's throne, acutely aware of every eye on him. Queen Nara entered last. She was taller than Kira, ancient and terrifying, her presence commanding absolute silence. Daughter, the queen said, her voice like stone grinding. Explain why the human contaminant sits in our sacred council. Kira stood, calm and precise. Mother, I propose an experiment. We have assumed human emotion equals weakness. I wish to test this assumption rigorously before we expend military resources on an invasion. The test is war itself. They will fall. Perhaps. But understanding our enemy's perceived strengths may reveal exploitable weaknesses. Kira's logic was flawless. If emotion is truly inferior, observing this human closely will prove it. If not, we gain intelligence. The queen studied Stephen with cold calculation. Very well. But when your experiment fails, the invasion proceeds immediately. No further delays. Agreed. As the council continued, discussing military logistics and resource allocation, Stephen watched Kira. She never looked at him, but he saw tension in her shoulders that wasn't there before. She was protecting him. Buying time. But for what? Did she even know? After the council, she led him to a training hall where Velrothi warriors practiced combat. You will learn our ways, she said. Prove your strength. Stephen looked at the warriors, each one enhanced, faster and stronger than any human. I'll try, he said. Kira's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Good. The training was brutal. Velrothi combat focused on efficiency and precision, using their superior speed and strength. Stephen was outmatched in every physical category. But he'd been trained by Earth's military. He understood tactics, adaptation, and the one advantage humans had, unpredictability. On the third day, he managed to score a hit on his instructor, a veteran warrior named Tal. The training hall went silent. Tal stared at the point where Stephen's practice blade had touched his armor, impossible and real. How? The warrior asked. Stephen panted, exhausted. I didn't try to be faster. I predicted where you'd be. Kira watched from the observation platform, her expression unreadable. That evening, she came to his quarters. No servants, no guards. Just her, standing in his doorway. May I enter? Of course, Radiance. She studied his small living space, the few personal items he'd brought from Earth. A photograph of his family. A worn book of poetry. You miss them, she said, touching the photograph. Every day. This is your parents. And my sister. She's 16. Wants to be a pilot. Kira picked up the poetry book, opened it to a random page. Her eyes scanned the words, ancient human verses about loss and longing. This causes you pain to read, she observed. Yet you keep it. Beautiful things can hurt, Stephen said softly. That doesn't make them less beautiful. Kira read aloud, her accent strange on the old words, I carry your heart with me. I carry it in my heart. She looked up. What does this mean? It means love makes you part of someone else. Their joy is yours. Their pain is yours. You're never alone. But you are alone. Here. Light years from them. Stephen met her eyes. I carry them with me. Kira set down the book carefully, like it was precious. We do not have words for this in our language anymore. We removed them. Maybe you can remember them. She moved closer, her curiosity overwhelming her usual control. Teach me. Teach you what? To feel. The request was dangerous, forbidden, impossible. But Stephen saw desperate hope in her eyes. Okay, he whispered. We'll try. They met in secret, in the crystal garden after the ship's night cycle. Kira insisted on discretion. If the court knew she was trying to access emotions, they would declare her genetically compromised. Stephen started with simple things. Music from Earth, pieces chosen for emotional resonance. Kira listened with her eyes closed, analyzing. I detect patterns that trigger neurological responses, she said. But I do not understand the ache. You feel it though, Stephen said. The ache. That's the start. She opened her eyes, and he saw fear there. Real, genuine fear. It hurts. Sometimes feelings do. Why would anyone want this? Stephen took a risk and reached out, stopping just before touching her hand. May I? Kira stared at his hand, then slowly, carefully, placed hers against it. Her skin was cool, slightly textured. Her hand had 4 fingers instead of 5. But the contact was electric. This is touch, Stephen said quietly. But it's also connection. Feel my pulse. She was silent, concentrating. Your heart rate is elevated. Because I'm nervous. Because this matters to me. Why does it matter? Because you matter. Kira pulled her hand back, breathing unsteadily. We have been together only days. Logically, I cannot matter to you. Logic isn't everything. It is all I have ever known. Stephen smiled sadly. Maybe it's time to know something else. Over the next weeks, they continued the secret lessons. Stephen taught her about laughter by sharing absurd human jokes that made no logical sense. Taught her about sadness by reading poetry. Taught her about hope by talking about humanity's impossible dreams. And slowly, Kira began to change. She smiled once, a brief flicker when Stephen tripped over his own feet during combat training. She didn't report it. Didn't analyze it. Just let it happen. The walls were cracking. But walls exist for a reason, and when they fall, what they've been holding back comes flooding through. Kira began experiencing dreams, a side effect of awakening emotions that her genetic conditioning had suppressed. She would wake in her quarters, gasping, overwhelmed by visions of Stephen in danger, of her people dying, of the universe ending in fire and silence. She went to him in the middle of the night cycle, forgetting propriety, and found him awake, reading. I cannot stop them, she whispered from his doorway. The dreams. They feel so real. Stephen rose immediately. Come in. Sit down. She sat on his simple furniture, trembling. A Velrothi princess, trembling. It was unthinkable. Tell me, Stephen said gently. I saw you die. In my dream, you were struck down, and I felt. She struggled for words. Like my hearts were being torn out. Like the universe was ending. Is this what you feel? Always? Not always. But sometimes, yes. How do you bear it? Stephen sat beside her, careful to maintain some distance. We share it. That's the secret. You don't carry fear or sadness alone. But I am alone. I am a princess. I cannot show weakness. You're not alone right now, Stephen said quietly. I'm here. Kira looked at him, really looked at him. This human who had entered her life and dismantled everything she believed. This strange, fragile, beautiful being who spoke of impossible things like they were simple truths. Stephen, she whispered. I think something is wrong with me. Why? Because when I am with you, I do not want to be anywhere else. Because when you smile, I feel warm. Because the thought of you leaving causes me pain. Her voice broke. What is this? Stephen's expression was tender and sad. I think you know what it is. We do not have that word. Yes, you do. You just forgot it. He took a breath. Kira, you're feeling what I've been feeling since I met you. Her dark eyes were wide, vulnerable. Name it. Love. The word hung between them like a living thing. Kira stood abruptly, backing away. No. No, that is impossible. I am Velrothi. We do not. You do. You're just scared of it. I am not scared. Fear is, she stopped. I am terrified. Stephen stood slowly. Me too. You. Why? Because I love you, Kira. And you're an alien princess, and I'm just a human, and this is impossible, and I don't care because it's real. Kira stared at him, her carefully constructed world shattering. Then she turned and fled. Stephen didn't follow. He understood. Some truths need space to breathe. But he wondered if he'd just lost her forever. Kira avoided Stephen for 3 days. She threw herself into royal duties, attended councils, reviewed military reports, anything to avoid thinking about what he'd said. Love. She'd awakened emotions, yes, but she'd thought she could control them. Study them. Understand them logically. But this was not logical. This was chaos in her chest, fire in her blood, aching when he wasn't near. This was everything her people had eliminated to survive. This was terrifying. General Voss found her in the observatory, staring at Earth's distant sun. "You are compromised," he said quietly. No accusation. Just observation. Kira didn't deny it. Yes. The human did this. No. I asked him to. She turned to face the old general. "You told me about the survivor. The one who spoke of love. Did you believe them?" "Truly." Voss was silent for a long moment. "I believed they had experienced something we had lost. Whether that loss was good or bad, I could not say." "I can," Kira whispered. "We lost everything that makes existence meaningful. We are empty, Voss. Perfect and empty. And the human offers to fill that emptiness. He does not offer. He simply is. He feels without fear. He loves without logic. He is everything we are not. Do you love him, Radiance?" The question should have been treasonous. Instead, it felt like relief. "I do not know. I have no reference. But when I am with him, I am more than a princess. I am." She struggled. "I am myself." Voss nodded slowly. "Then you face a choice. Duty or desire. Your people or your heart. Can I not have both? In my experience, Radiance, the universe rarely offers such kindness." That night, Kira went to Stephen's quarters. He opened the door, hope and worry warring on his face. "I do not know how to do this," she said without preamble. "I do not know how to be what you need. I don't need you to be anything but yourself. Myself is changing. Because of you." Stephen stepped aside. "Come in. Please." They talked through the night cycle. About fear, about change, about the impossible situation they'd created. About what it meant to feel, to want, to hope. As false dawn brightened the viewing port, Kira reached out and took his hand. "Teach me," she said. "Teach me everything." And Stephen, knowing the danger, knowing the impossibility, said yes. The queen was not blind. She saw her daughter's changes, the light in her eyes, the distraction. She summoned Kira to the royal chambers, alone. "You have grown close to the human," Queen Nara said. "Not a question. I am studying him, as proposed. You are compromising yourself." The queen's voice was hard. "I have reviewed biological scans. Your genetic conditioning is deteriorating. You are experiencing uncontrolled emotional responses." Kira kept her face neutral, but her heart's hammered. The experiment required close observation. The experiment is over. The human returns to Earth. The invasion proceeds in 2 days. Mother, no. Do not let primitive emotions cloud your judgment, daughter. The queen stepped closer, terrifying in her certainty. "I know what you are feeling. I felt it once, before my conditioning was reinforced. It passes. The human will die, either here or in the invasion. Let him go. You cannot do this. I am queen. I can do anything necessary for our empire's survival." Nara's expression softened fractionally. "I do this to protect you, Kira. Love is a disease that killed millions of our ancestors. It will kill you too if you let it." Kira stood tall, decision crystallizing. What if we were wrong? What if love is not a disease but a cure? A cure for what? For this emptiness. This existence without meaning. We have an empire, but what do we have it for? We live for thousands of years, but we never truly live at all. The queen's face hardened. "You are relieved of duty. You will be taken to the medical wing for genetic recalibration. The human leaves immediately. No. That was not a request. Guards entered. Kira's world collapsed. But before they could take her, General Voss appeared in the doorway. My queen, he said carefully. There is a situation. The human colonies have detected our fleet. They are mobilizing a defense force. It was a lie. Stephen had told her the colonies had no real military. But it bought time. The queen turned to address the general, and in that moment, Kira made a choice that would change everything. She ran. Kira found Stephen in the training hall, sparring with Tal. She burst in, composed veneer shattered. We must leave. Now. Stephen dropped his practice weapon. What happened? My mother knows. About us. About everything. She has ordered your expulsion and my reconditioning. She grabbed his arm, urgent. If you stay, you die. If I stay, I lose myself. Kira, slow down. I cannot slow down. Her voice broke. For the first time in my life, I am feeling everything at once, and it is chaos, and it is beautiful, and I cannot lose it. I cannot lose you. Stephen cupped her face gently, grounding her. Okay. Okay. What do you want to do? I want to choose. Not what is logical. Not what is duty. I want to choose what I feel. And what do you feel? Kira looked into his eyes, this human who had taught her to be alive. Love. I feel love. For you. And it terrifies me, and I do not care. Stephen smiled, even as alarms began blaring. The Queen's guards were coming. Then we run, he said. Together. Tal stepped between them and the door. Stephen tensed, ready to fight. But the warrior simply handed Kira a security clearance chip. Docking Bay 7, Tal said quietly. There is a scout ship. I will say you overpowered me. Kira stared. Why would you help us? Because you smiled at the human in training yesterday. I have never seen you smile, Radiance. It was. He searched for a word his language had nearly forgotten. It was beautiful. Whatever you have found, it is worth protecting. They ran through corridors Kira had known her entire life, now fleeing them. Stephen kept pace, his human endurance surprising Velrothi crew members who stepped aside in confusion. At Docking Bay 7, they found the scout ship. Small, fast, lightly armed. As they boarded, Stephen turned to Kira. Are you sure? You're giving up everything. No, Kira said, starting the launch sequence. I am choosing everything that matters. The ship launched as guard cruisers scrambled to intercept. And two impossible souls fled into the stars, together. The scout ship was fast, but the Velrothi cruisers were faster. Within hours, they were surrounded, weapons locked on. Queen Nara's face appeared on the communications screen, cold and absolute. Daughter, you have committed treason. Return immediately, and I will show mercy. Kira sat in the pilot's seat, Stephen beside her. Her hands were steady. No, mother. Then you will be destroyed. I will not allow sentiment to compromise our empire. Then you have already lost everything worth having. The cruisers powered weapons. This was the end. But then something impossible happened. 3 Velrothi warships broke formation, positioning themselves between Kira's scout ship and the Queen's forces. General Voss's voice came through. My queen, I cannot allow this execution. Voss, you dare commit mutiny? I dare to remember what we were before fear made us empty. The princess has found something we all lost. I will not let you kill it. 2 more ships joined Voss. Then 5 more. Captains and crews who had watched Kira change, who had seen her smile, who had wondered if their perfect empire was missing something essential. The Queen's fleet outnumbered the rebels, but the split was devastating. A civil war was beginning. "Stand down, all of you," the Queen commanded. "I will not destroy my own people for one compromised princess and a human." Kira opened a channel to all ships. "You will not destroy anyone. I am leaving, Mother. I am going to Earth, and I am going to help broker a real peace. Not through conquest, but through understanding. The choice is yours, war, or something better." The silence stretched. Then, slowly, the Queen's ships powered down weapons. "Go," Queen Nara said quietly. "But you are no longer my daughter. No longer Velrothi. You are exile." Kira felt the words like a blade, but Stephen took her hand. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I am not," Kira said. And meant it. They set course for Earth, the rebel ships escorting them to the border. Behind them, the Velrothi Empire watched their princess choose love over duty. And wondered if she was braver than all of them. The journey to Earth took 3 weeks. Kira and Stephen lived in the small scout ship, learning each other without the constraints of court or culture. She taught him Velrothi star songs, ancient melodies from before the conditioning. He taught her to laugh freely, without analyzing why. They talked about the future. About how to convince Earth to trust her. About what peace might look like. But mostly, they just existed together. And for Kira, that was revolution enough. As they approached Earth's solar system, reality returned. The human defense fleet scrambled, seeing a Velrothi ship. Ambassador Wren's face appeared on screen, shocked. "Stephen. We thought you were dead." "Not dead. Just, it's complicated." He gestured to Kira. "Ambassador, meet Princess Kira. She's here to negotiate a real treaty." Wren's eyes widened. "The Velrothi princess? Stephen, what have you done?" "Something impossible," Kira said, finding her diplomatic voice. "Ambassador, I seek asylum and audience with your government. I bring intelligence about the Velrothi fleet and a proposal for lasting peace." The Earth ships surrounded them, cautious. But they provided escort to the lunar diplomatic station. As they docked, Stephen turned to Kira. "Are you ready?" "No. But I choose this anyway." The reception was tense. Earth's leaders were suspicious, terrified, hopeful. Kira presented her case with the same precision she'd once used in Velrothi courts, but now with something else, passion. She spoke of what she'd learned. How emotion and logic weren't opposites but complements. How Earth's colonies weren't weakness but strength, communities worth protecting. She offered intelligence on Velrothi fleet movements, defense weaknesses, diplomatic channels. Not as betrayal, but as bridge building. "My people fear chaos," she said. "Show them that emotion does not equal chaos. Show them peace is stronger than conquest." The Earth Council debated for hours. Finally, they agreed to a provisional alliance. The border colonies would be reinforced, but diplomacy would continue. It wasn't perfect. But it was hope. That night, Stephen and Kira stood in the observation deck, watching Earth turn below. "I have no home now," Kira said quietly. "No people. No empire." Stephen took her hand. "You have me. Is that enough?" "I don't know. But we'll figure it out together." Kira leaned against him, exhausted and alive. Together. Yes. And for the first time since leaving her empire, she felt at peace. The peace was fragile. Earth and the Velrothi Empire established a neutral zone, communication channels opened. The rebel Velrothi ships, led by General Voss, created a third faction, the Awakened, they called themselves. Velrothi who chose to restore their emotions. But Queen Nara was not idle. She saw division as weakness. 6 months after Kira's exile, the Queen's fleet moved on a border colony, testing Earth's resolve. The call came in the middle of Earth's night. Steven and Kira, now living in the diplomatic quarters, rushed to the command center. "They're attacking Covenant Station," Ambassador Wren said grimly. 50,000 civilians. "We have ships en route, but they won't get there in time." Kira's face went pale. "This is my fault. She is making an example." "No," Steven said firmly. "This is her choice. I must stop her." "How?" Kira looked at him, decision crystallizing. "I must return. Face her. Challenge her right to rule. That's suicide. You said she'll have you executed." "Perhaps. But if I challenge her before the High Court, law demands she face me in single combat. If I win, I can end this." Steven grabbed her shoulders. "You can't win. She's been trained for centuries." "I know." "Kira, no." "Steven, please. I must do this. Those people will die because of me. Because I made her look weak. I cannot live with that." He saw the determination in her eyes, the love and the terrible courage. Everything he'd taught her about choosing heart over logic, and now it was going to kill her. "Then I'm coming with you," he said. "Absolutely not. You don't get to make that choice alone anymore. We're together, remember?" Kira's eyes filled with tears, the first he'd ever seen from her. "I cannot lose you." "Then don't. Win." They took the scout ship, broadcasting directly to the Velrothi flagship. Kira invoked the ancient right of challenge, a law so old even the Queen couldn't refuse. They docked under truce conditions. The High Court assembled, thousands of Velrothi watching as the exiled princess returned. Queen Nara sat on her throne, expression unreadable. "You dare return?" "I dare challenge your right to rule," Kira said, voice steady. "You have broken the covenant of protection. You attack those who cannot defend themselves. You deny our people the truth of what we are. And what are we, daughter? More than you allow us to be." The Queen stood. "Very well. Trial by combat. Tomorrow at dawn. Prepare yourself." As they were led to detention quarters, Steven held Kira close. "I don't know how to win," she whispered. "Yes, you do. You fight for something worth fighting for. Is love enough? It has to be." The combat arena was ancient, a circle of crystalline platforms above a void. Thousands gathered to watch. General Voss and the Awakened. Loyal Velrothi soldiers. And Steven, held in the observation ring, unable to help. Kira entered wearing traditional armor, lighter than her mother's but faster. The Queen was a legendary warrior, undefeated in 300 years. The odds were impossible. They circled each other as the ritual words were spoken. Then the battle began. The Queen was faster, stronger, more experienced. Within minutes, Kira was bleeding from a dozen cuts. She fought with everything Steven had taught her, with unpredictability and heart, but it wasn't enough. The Queen struck a devastating blow, and Kira fell. "Yield," Queen Nara said. "I will make your death quick." Kira struggled to rise. "No. Why continue? You cannot win. Because I fight for love. And love does not yield." She attacked again, desperate and fierce. The Queen parried easily, moving to strike the killing blow. And Steven, watching the woman he loved about to die, broke free from his guards and ran onto the arena floor. The crowd gasped. Violation of the sacred circle meant death for both parties. "Steven, no." Kira screamed. The Queen's blade swung toward him instead, an execution strike for his transgression. And Kira, moving on instinct and emotion and impossible love, threw herself between them. The blade meant for Steven pierced her chest. Time stopped. Kira fell, blood spreading across her armor. Steven caught her, his world ending. No, 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 Kira, stay with me. She looked up at him, smiling despite the pain. Now you know, she whispered. I believe in love too. The queen stood frozen, her blade dripping with her daughter's blood. And Stephen, this human who had never wanted violence, looked up at the queen with tears streaming down his face. She chose love over everything, he said. She chose me. She chose peace. And you killed her for it. His voice echoed through the silent arena. Is this your empire? Is this your strength? Killing those who dare to feel. The queen's weapon fell from her hand. And something impossible happened. Queen Nara fell to her knees beside her daughter, and for the first time in centuries, she wept. The royal medical team worked frantically. The blade had missed Kira's primary heart by millimeters, but the damage was severe. Stephen refused to leave her side as they fought to save her life. Hours passed in agonizing silence. Finally, the chief physician emerged. She lives. But recovery will be long. Stephen collapsed in relief. Queen Nara stood like a statue outside the medical bay. When Stephen emerged, she looked at him with eyes that had rediscovered pain. I remember now, she said quietly. What it was to love. I loved her mother, before the conditioning. I loved my daughter when she was born. Then I locked it away because I was told it was weakness. It's not weakness, Stephen said, exhausted. It's the only real strength there is. I see that now. Too late. It's not too late. Stop the invasion. Make peace. Let your people choose. The queen was silent for a long moment. Then she turned to General Voss, who had been waiting. Recall all fleets. Send envoys to Earth. We will try. Over the next weeks, as Kira recovered, everything changed. The queen began the process of reversing genetic conditioning, allowing Velrothi who wished it to restore their emotions. It was slow, painful, chaotic. But it was healing. The awakened grew in numbers. Art and music returned to Velrothi ships. Families formed from genuine affection rather than genetic contracts. Earth and the Velrothi Empire signed a historic treaty. The border colonies were protected. Trade began. Cultural exchange. And through it all, Stephen sat beside Kira's bed, holding her hand. When she finally woke, truly woke, her first words were, "You should not have interfered." I know. I was trying to save you. I know. I nearly died. I know. Don't ever do it again. Kira smiled weakly. I will do it every time. Because I love you, Stephen of Earth. And love, I have learned, is worth dying for. No, Stephen said, kissing her forehead gently. It's worth living for. Kira's recovery took 3 months. When she was finally strong enough to walk, Stephen took her to the observation deck where they'd first truly talked. I have a question, he said nervously. You are always full of questions. This one is important. He took her hand, 4 fingers intertwined with his 5. I know we're from different worlds. I know we're still figuring out what peace looks like. But I also know I can't imagine a future without you. Kira's heart beat faster. Stephen. In human culture, when 2 people love each other and want to build a life together, we have a tradition. He pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring of earth silver and Velrothi crystal, something he'd commissioned from both cultures. We call it marriage. Kira, will you marry me? She stared at the ring, then at him, tears forming again. She'd learned to cry freely now, and didn't hide it. In old Velrothi culture, before the conditioning, we had something similar. A binding of hearts, we called it. I thought we had lost it, but... She touched his face gently. Yes. In every language, in every way that matters, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she pulled him into a kiss that bridged galaxies. The wedding was held on a neutral station, attended by humans and Velrothi, awakened and traditional. Queen Nara officiated, her voice steady but her eyes bright. We are here to witness the binding of two souls who taught us what we had forgotten, that strength without heart is hollow, and that love is the bravest choice of all. General Voss stood as Kira's witness. Ambassador Wren stood as Stephen's. Two peoples, once destined for war, now joined in celebration. When Stephen and Kira were pronounced bonded, the cheers echoed through the station. That night, alone in their quarters, Kira rested her head on Stephen's chest, listening to his heartbeat. I was so certain love was weakness, she murmured. I was so wrong. You weren't wrong. You just hadn't experienced it yet. And now? Now we get to experience it together. For the rest of our lives. Kira smiled, truly at peace. However long that may be. Forever sounds good to me. Forever, she agreed. And in the vast darkness of space, two impossible hearts beat as one. The first year of their marriage was spent traveling between Earth and Velrothi space, helping to build the new peace. Kira became an ambassador, using her unique perspective to bridge the cultural divide. Stephen worked with the awakened, helping newly emotional Velrothi understand and process feelings they'd never experienced. He became something of a legend, the human who taught an empire to feel. But the work was hard. Not every Velrothi wanted to change. A traditionalist faction formed, loyal to the old ways. There were protests, occasional violence. Through it all, Stephen and Kira remained each other's anchor. One evening, Kira found Stephen on their private balcony, looking exhausted. Rough day? She asked. 3 Velrothi rejected emotional restoration today. Said they'd rather die than feel. I don't know how to reach them. Kira wrapped her arms around him from behind. You cannot save everyone. You can only offer the choice. I know. It's just hard. The hardest things usually are. She turned him to face her. But you changed me. You changed my mother. You changed an empire. That is enough. Stephen managed a smile. When did you become the wise one? I learned from the best. They stood together, watching the stars, and Kira felt a flutter of nervousness. Stephen, there is something I must tell you. What's wrong? Nothing is wrong. Something is new. She took his hand and placed it on her abdomen. We are going to have a child. Stephen's eyes went wide. Wait, is that even possible? Human and Velrothi. Apparently yes. The medical scans confirmed it. A hybrid. The first of both our kinds. Stephen laughed, a sound of pure joy, and lifted her up, spinning carefully. We're going to be parents. Yes. Are you ready? Absolutely not. Are you? Not even slightly. They laughed together, two souls who had crossed impossible distances, now about to create something entirely new. A future built on love. 18 months later, Kira stood in the grand hall of the new peace station, holding their daughter, Mira. The child had Stephen's curious eyes and Kira's luminescent skin, human and Velrothi features blended into something beautiful and unprecedented. The station was a joint project, built at the border between human and Velrothi space. A symbol of what cooperation could achieve. Today was the dedication ceremony. Representatives from both civilizations gathered, along with the awakened and even some traditionalists who had come to witness history. Queen Nara approached, her expression soft as she looked at her granddaughter. She is perfect. She is chaos, Kira said fondly. She cries, she laughs, she demands attention. Completely illogical. Completely alive, the queen corrected, gently touching Myra's tiny hand. Ambassador Wren stepped to the podium. We are here to dedicate this station not to conquest or dominance, but to understanding. 2 years ago, we stood on the brink of war. Today, we stand together because two individuals chose love over fear. The crowd applauded. Stephen stood beside Kira, their daughter between them. I used to think Earth's colonies didn't matter, Kira said quietly to Stephen. That people didn't matter unless they were strong. And now? Now I know that every person matters. Every choice. Every moment of connection. She looked at him, then at their daughter. You taught me that. This is the result. General Voss approached with a group of young Velrothi, all recently awakened. Princess, they wish to thank you. The young Velrothi bowed. Their spokesperson, barely out of adolescence, said, You showed us it was possible to change. To feel. To be more than what we were designed to be. Thank you. Kira felt tears forming again, but didn't hide them. Thank each other. And thank those who choose bravery every day. As the ceremony concluded, fireworks exploded above the station, human and Velrothi designs intermingled in brilliant colors. Stephen pulled Kira close, their daughter between them. You know what I think? What? I think we're going to be okay. All of us. It won't be easy, but we're going to build something beautiful. Kira kissed him softly. We already did. They stood together, surrounded by two civilizations learning to understand each other, while stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance. And in that moment, love, impossible, illogical, beautiful love, was enough. It was everything.